This TikTok video is going viral after someone questioned whether the Space Shuttle Challenger astronauts who allegedly died in 1986 are actually still alive. I'm about to have the guy from the video on, but take a look at the viral video.
I come here asking for your help, but first a little backstory. I think we all remember the Challenger explosion that took place in 1986. It tragically took the lives of all 7 astronauts on board. It launched not too far from where we're standing here today. Well, the interesting thing is, a couple decades later, this thing called the internet came about, and someone allegedly found almost all of those astronauts alive and well, many using the same exact names. As you can see here, we have Challenger astronaut Judith Resnick and also a Judith Resnick Yale law professor. Michael J. Smith, the pilot of the Challenger astronaut, and also professor at University of Wisconsin, now retired Michael J. Smith. Commander Dick Scobie, who is now president of Cows and Trees. Now, if you'll notice, they all have the exact same faces 30 some odd years later, the same exact name, and they are the same age. Now, we all have a doppelganger out there, right? No big deal. But to have the same face, the same age, and the same exact name is extremely rare. So rare, I could only find one case in the last 120 years. And we're supposed to believe that 3 people from one spaceflight have exact lookalikes that have the same age and same exact names. This, ladies and gentlemen, is beyond statistically impossible. Ms. Resnick was questioned at Yale by a journalist, and she panicked and ran from the camera. Why? Mr. Michael J. Smith was also questioned, and he said, "Yeah, we look alike, but that's not me." You can see both of these exchanges in a film called Level with Me, and you can be the judge. Mr.
Sir,
Scobie
I'm going to have to stop.
Sir, this is a public comment.
I know what it is, sir. I'm very familiar with the public comment.
Okay.
And part of the public comment is that you're only allowed to address things that we have jurisdiction over. We have no
I have a direct request at the end of this that is in your purview, sir, please. I do. Can we hold the time, please? I have a direct request that...
Listen to me.
Okay.
Very carefully. Mr. Richardson, would you give an opinion in regards to this, please?
Yes, public comment is reserved for issues or topics that are under the jurisdiction or control of the county commission or that are relevant to the business of the county commission. So if your request at the end is going to explain why that falls into any of this, make that request now before you continue.
Absolutely. So as I was saying, I'll just end it with what I was ending with. But the ask is that Ms. Pritchett, who knows very well about questioning science, whether it be COVID or fluoride, I'm just asking you all to question the science here. Your Goodson and Pritchett, your district covers the Kennedy Space Center. This launched from the Kennedy Space Center. You have the ability to help me in sounding the alarm and asking the federal government for help. If this is contained in your area, I should be able to at least address something that happened here. Don't you agree?
That's not within the jurisdiction or authority of the county commission.
Thank you very much.
Will you let me finish for at least 10 seconds?
No, sir, you're finished. Thank you.
Thank you for taking away my freedom of speech today in here.
I did not take away your freedom of speech.
Yes, you did.
I don't want to hear it from you people down here.
Just because this is an uncomfortable topic.
Officers, please remove this man from the room.
You just violated the First Amendment.
I didn't violate the First Amendment.
No,
he violated the rules.
This is a limited public forum, and the meeting is for the purpose of the business of the county commission. It's not for this purpose.
Now, if you want to go too, take him out too. Officer, take him out also.
Everyone just calm down. They can leave willingly.
Wow.
No, we're leaving willingly. You don't have to remove us.
You just made a decision about NASA. You're making your decisions based.
Sir.
You violated the First Amendment.
Thank you very much for your opinion.
Yeah, maybe check reading it out.
These astronauts are alive, by the way. Look it up. You can't have 3 doppelgangers. You can't. Same face, same name, same age. It's impossible. Look it up. Statistically impossible.
On Point Behavioral Center's right down the street. That's where I suggest you go.
Just because you think this is a mental problem, I should still be able to talk. It's your opinion, sir.
Have a nice day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Yeah, y'all have a good one.
All right, take care.
Thanks. As I was saying, before I was rudely interrupted and my First Amendment was violated during a public comment period here in Brevard County, I was saying that Mr. Scobie is the most interesting because not only does he have the same age, same face, same name, same slanted eye in the cheek if you look very closely. Get this, he created a company called Cows and Trees, and the promo video has a cow blasting off strapped to a rocket, leaving a smoke trail eerily similar to that of the Challenger explosion. You couldn't make this up if you tried. That's why I today am calling on the Brevard County Commissioners to stand with me in demanding the Senate Subcommittee on Space Science open a new investigation into the Challenger explosion. Because if this is all one big coincidence, no big deal. But if it's true, people watch what they believe were 7 people blown up on live television, inflicting emotional and psychological trauma on millions of Americans. And we deserve to know why on earth something like that would be done. And like I was saying to Commissioner Pritchett and Commissioner Goodson, the only reason I'm back in here is because NASA ignored my last request and was completely unresponsive about the ISS discrepancies. I was blocked by their public affairs officer after one polite request. Commissioner Pritchett and Commissioner Goodson cover the area that contains the Kennedy Space Center. So I was just simply hoping that they would be able to help me in some way since it is their territory. I still thank them for their time, and I wish I was able to finish my speech, but we finished outside, and that's good enough. I hope we can get some transparency with NASA one way or another.
Wow. And here to join me is Justin Harvey from that video. It's got 1.5 million views on TikTok, and everyone is really raising their eyebrows because there are some really strange parallels with these astronauts and these people who in all areas are identical to them.
Right.
I looked them up too. Thanks for joining me. So how did you come across the fact that these astronauts look identical to these people who are still alive?
Well, I got to give credit to whoever the researchers were that originally found them. I think when the internet really got to a place where we could search people, look up things closely, company and university websites that have a nice bio and a picture. I think when that era came about and people were able to track them down, if you were looking into NASA corruption and fraud, you would come across this topic. And it was always very interesting because, like I said, everybody can have a doppelganger, but you'll never meet anybody that has the same exact name as you and looks just like you. And if you do, you're not going to have 3 people on one flight that have that coincidence. So it's
Look at this girl. She looks
What's that?
identical to the professor. I
know.
just brought the so she's a law professor at Yale. Judith.
Yep, and she was actually questioned on camera by a journalist about a year ago. And, instead of stopping and saying, yeah, it's crazy, I look like that astronaut and we have the same exact name and age, but it's not me. She panicked and ran, which really only adds to the kind of questions of what's really going on here. Is that really her? And it looks to be like it is. So like I've told people, most people will say, if this is some elaborate conspiracy, why on earth did they not change their names? That seems so silly. But I think we've got to remember in 1986, it was a very different world and no one could ever dream of the internet coming about and being able to search people, their names, their face, their profession. And, in the 1980s, it was just a different world where you were probably easier to disappear into the country. Obviously, some of them took jobs at universities, but also interestingly, 2 other astronauts that I didn't even mention happened to have identical twins. So when their doppelgangers were found, we were told that they both have identical twins. And to me, that's even rare in itself. How many people are identical twins that became an astronaut and got on the same space flight? So when 6 of 7 of them were found, 2 claimed to be identical twins, and the other 4, they just say we're crazy and it's a big coincidence.
Okay, this one, and by the way, the fact checkers are circling saying this is bogus. But
absolutely,
so hopefully my YouTube video stays up. But okay, look at how far apart his eyes are. And again, they have the same names. They're the same ages.
Right.
But so he has a unique look with his eyes being that far apart. Okay, and then we show Richard Scobie today, who's a CEO of a marketing company, and he's got the exact same face.
Yeah, and if you compare a couple different pictures of him back to back, you'll see he's got this weird cheek indentation, and it's different on each side, and it's in both individuals, and so are the separated eyes. And for you to have a name like Richard Dick Scobie, I mean, how many Dick Scobies do you know? I mean, it sounds like a problem you need to get checked out. It doesn't sound like someone's name. And it's just so impossible when you really break it down. His website that we looked up that's got the spiraling smoke trail, just like the Challenger explosion.
Yeah.
They took that down immediately when people started finding that and sharing it online.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, That's gotta be him. Look at that.
I know. Look
I
at that
know
eye.
that NASA's saying, stop it. That's silly. But my eyes are saying otherwise.
Right. And I would maybe give someone the benefit of the doubt if it was just one of them, but to have 2, 3, and 4 with the same names and staying in the same profession at times, like,
Yeah.
it's very bizarre. And that's why we want a new investigation, because I don't think it's statistically possible for this to be just some anomaly unless there is some crazy Mandela effect thing that we can't explain. It looks like these people are still alive.
Yeah. Just confused though at why, why would they fake their deaths? What would the purpose even be?
So that's a really good question. And that's something that I haven't really, I don't like to spend a whole lot of time on because it's speculation, but some people think they just were able to point at it and say, oh, look at that. Look what happened. We need more funding for it. Or, oh, look what happened. That was so terrible. We lost all that life. Then we can't do this anymore. Interestingly enough, I've had people, saying, yeah, I actually wanted to be an astronaut until I saw that video. And then it made me think, oh, that's way too scary. You could get blown up. A teacher just blew up. So I don't know, maybe the intended effect was to discourage people from wanting to do that. You can only really speculate the motive. I think that's why it's important for people to push for an investigation, because that's the only way you can actually find out someone else's intentions. I'm not inside their head. There's also another interesting way to look at it is you got to think about the collective trauma that was felt around the nation. They took all those kids and pulled them all into the classrooms. There was a teacher on board. So all the teachers and all the students around the country watched the teacher train and felt connected to her. And they all stopped school and all watched that launch because the teacher was on there. And for some reason, since everyone feels that connection and that trauma together, they will fight tooth and nail against anyone who questions NASA. There's almost this impenetrable emotional barrier that was brought around NASA, where the boomer generation is like, how dare you question them? Those heroic astronauts, you're mocking the dead. And it makes it difficult to question when there's loss of life. And I think that may have been the intended effect as well.
Well, I found some interesting clips. Actually, Wesh News in Florida did an investigative piece on evidence that the astronauts were still alive, at least until their part of the rocket hit the water. So the part they were in didn't explode at all. This investigation says right here.
The actual vehicle breakup was essentially obscured from view by the vapor cloud, which abruptly enveloped the vehicle. Hundreds of fragments were noted exiting the ET cloud. Those identified included the shuttle main engines, the left wing, crew cabin, and both SRBs.
What was happening to the crew at this moment? They were still alive.
Challenge is fast, launch is fast. It's bang, and then it's a 2-minute ride down. And you're conscious, we know that.
Astronaut Story Musgrave told me the crew survived in that white cloud. It was Challenger's fuel tank that exploded. The shuttle itself just broke apart. The crew compartment with its 7 living...
So, if they were in there, they had 2 minutes of falling to, I don't know, possibly...
Yeah, and that's the theory. I don't know how much I can lend credibility to the other bits of the story, because it almost ends up being like 9/11. If they're lying about it, kind of sounds like telling me you found the terrorist passport at ground zero and everything else was vaporized. I don't know what to believe with that, but our idea is that they never got on and that they went down some sort of emergency chute that takes you to a safe room, which is a real thing. And they just, you can find it on, I think there was a BBC report where they show that if there's ever an emergency, they just go down this slide into a bunker.
Oh.
So they most likely, it just exploded empty. A lot of people will say, well, I watched it happen. Or are you telling me, how is this possible? Well, they just never got on.
So here's a clip of kind of telling the story of what happened to their bodies after they died.
Lives on that day. On March 9th, NASA announced that divers had found their cabin in the Atlantic Ocean, and it took until April 20th to recover it. Those remains were eventually cremated and commingled at Arlington National Cemetery, where they rest to this day. The Challenger crew were all smiles before their mission and happy to the point of jovial as each member spoke a couple of words of thanks to everyone present at the launch. In addition to mission specialists, of special note was Krista McCullough, the first teacher in space, chosen out of 11,000 applicants.
Has it all hit you yet?
No, I don't think so. I still can't believe that I'm going to actually be going into that shuttle.
She and the rest of the crew probably lost consciousness due to a change in cabin pressure and died from lack of oxygen before their shuttle hit the water.
Wow. But did that happen?
I think I tend to believe that for some reason, whatever reason this was done, bringing the teacher into the scenario made it very made people feel more connected to it because she was a civilian, and there were tons of finalists. I even have a friend that knows that had a teacher who almost made it to go on that shuttle. So everyone has sort of a connection. Everyone remembers where they were. It makes it very difficult to sort of like question a historical event like that.
But why would NASA purposely detonate their rocket? Or did they have an intention to send it up there unoccupied and then it exploded?
I think it was either a ploy to either get more funding, a ploy to shut the program down. Maybe, hey, we can't actually go to space. We can't go to the moon. We need to just blow this up and claim these people died so that we can say, hey, look, we can't really do this, and keep kicking the can down the road. As we've seen, they can't go back. I feel like they probably murdered Gus Grissom too. He was an astronaut that was about to speak out about how they weren't able to even make a phone call between buildings. How are we going to get to the moon is what he said. He hung a lemon in one of the aircrafts. And when he was about to speak out, some mysterious fire started and killed him and 2 other astronauts. And many people think that Gus Grissom was murdered because he knew that that it was a fraud and they can't go anywhere. So a lot of people in the community that believe in this story think that we can't go anywhere, and if they blow up a rocket full of people, they can say, hey, look, we gotta cut this out. We can't keep losing teachers and astronauts like this.
Just so YouTube, is satisfied. Here's the PolitiFact fact check saying, you guys are wacko for questioning this.
And I will say one of the main points they bring up in there that there's a decent devil's advocate is if you look up Judith Resnick, it appears that she was already involved in some activities with Yale while she was allegedly still an astronaut. But
wow.
If you're in a government, if this is legitimate and we're talking about a massive, witness protection sort of program, you're going to plant these people's identities and have some overlap. So I wouldn't put it past them.
Is this now the confrontation of her? I want to see that. Is this the video where that happened? The level?
I don't believe so. Oh yeah. Well, no, it's in Level with Me, the 3rd installment of this film series.
So not this one.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is making a flat Earth argument, which
those films are for the most part, yeah. But it covers the Challenger disaster about 18 minutes. For the first 18 minutes of the 3rd movie.
Okay, well, we'll have to, for the viewers, they can check that out and see her being confronted. I can find it before the show.
Keep in mind, I only had 3 minutes up there, so the other astronauts and the other stories, you can hear all about that in that film.
Oh wow! No, that's their doppelgangers or something else. I mean, and Judith's, it says she was born. Google says that Judith Resnick, who's still alive, was born 1950. Judith Resnick, who's dead, according to Google, was born 1949. So I think it looks like, so if you want my opinion, I don't like to speculate. I really just like to point out the statistically impossible doppelgangers. But to speculate, I think that they probably told them that they weren't going anywhere late in the game. They probably weren't that happy about it. They said, I want to still have a public life and I want to keep my name. And they said, all right, we'll let you do that. The internet wasn't around yet. You don't have to worry about people finding you. So they let them keep their name. They took jobs at prestigious universities, Yale, University of Wisconsin, Syracuse. Because they're smart people.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, this isn't, they're not going to be a public figure. Right.
Right.
Because an average professor isn't known across the nation. Nobody will connect the dots.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where it's hidden in plain sight. If one of those people walk up to you, you probably don't remember what they look like, what their name was. You just know that thing blew up many years ago. So they let them keep the same name. They give them a cushion job. They plant a little bit of overlap of their professions and change their birth date. I mean, it's probably not too much more difficult than that. I think the most interesting thing would be to find one of their family members. You know, how come one of the family members from one of these supposed doppelgangers hasn't come out and been like, my mom is not that astronaut, or my aunt is not that supposed dead astronaut? Not a single person said that. This conspiracy has been around for almost 10 years now.
Wow.
It's interesting that no one has popped up and said, yeah, it's crazy that, you know, my uncle looks exactly like a dead astronaut, has the same name, is the same age, and not a single person in my family's ever brought it up. No one's ever reported on it. Like, it ends up leading to more questions than answers when you start really thinking about it.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre that our government would do something like that. And I
Is
mean,
it anymore?
now I'm laughing. Like, is it, after the things we've been through recently? But no, it is to you know, to do something so elaborate, like concealing someone's survived a crash.
Right.
That's hard to believe. But when I look at the fact that these people, they're
Yeah, and I think that's what I have to do too, because sometimes it's hard for me to wrap my head around, and I know it is for other people. But you know, sometimes we have to set aside the want and need to understand the motive and how could this be possible sort of thoughts, and just look at the evidence. You know, if the doppelganger thing really doesn't add up and these people look that much alike, we have to just set aside the impossibility factor and just ask for an investigation. And that's why I want the Senate subcommittee to have a hearing, open an investigation. I know those county commissioners aren't going to do anything. I know they probably can't do anything, but you're looking at a person who has no recourse and no one to talk to about this. So I used a public forum in the county where the Challenger exploded.
Wow. I remember I interviewed an astronaut back in like 2018, and they were talking about a plan to return to the moon in 2024. And I guess that's probably not going to happen, because we're not hearing that timeline anymore. But that's also, we got a new president, and Trump was really about space.
Right.
And Biden, maybe not so much.
Well, it's funny enough, you can actually find old clips of George Bush Jr. and Bill Clinton talking about going back to the moon and going to Mars. So when you really put it in perspective, it's like, what's the problem? You could
all
go
these
in
presidents
1969.
want to.
Right.
Yeah, but they're not ultimately the decision makers, we find, even though that NASA is, it's part of that they're what they're in charge of, right?
Right, exactly.
So this is all, it's in that documentary to try to prove flat Earth. Now, flat Earth, I've heard arguments, it does not make sense to me. I actually didn't realize anyone believed that until recently.
Yeah, it's been an exponential growth probably in that topic since 2015.
Wow.
If you ever want to have somebody on, your guy is Flat Earth Dave. He'll come on and he brings like the diagrams, and he's got an app with a friend finder. He'll even tell you how many flat earthers there are out there. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, anytime you go to a high altitude, you can see the curvature of the Earth.
Oh, can you though?
Yes, you can.
It's interesting because the ocean
drops off, the horizon is at a certain point.
Well, we think we can see it from an airplane, but I thought the same thing too. But I've got friends that have sent the high altitude balloons up to 120,000 feet, which is 4 times higher than an airliner, and it's as level as a ruler. So I think there's a lot of I think we just assume it is, because I've even talked to pilots that are like, well, yeah, you can see it. But then if you talk to them again, or if you really look at it, you're like, I guess you're right. On a clear day with no clouds, it does look just perfectly flat out there. But that doesn't prove anything. What you see could be bigger, so big that doesn't, it's just the sticking point of whether you can see it from the airplane. It doesn't prove anything.
Yeah. It just makes sense to me. I just don't think Earth is a lily pad floating through space.
Well, that's the other thing is you got to you kind of have to throw out the whole model. Like flat earthers don't believe that we're just like a disk in space thrown into the solar system. They believe that the entire model is misdescribed and we're more like it sounds silly and don't take it literally, but think of like a snow globe and all the stars and planets and everything that you see in the sky is just in the glass dome above you and we're the ground. So we're not like we wouldn't be like a planet flying through space and you can't just turn it into a pancake. It kind of changes the whole system around.
So there's no end to the ground. It's just the ground is eternity.
Well, that's a great question. Nobody knows because they won't let us explore past the 60th parallel south. No one can go to Antarctica independently without the government or tens of thousands of dollars. So
I do think there's something being hidden down there.
Yeah, well, that's definitely worth looking into right there because
I don't think it's the end of the earth. I think there's some projects down there.
Well, if all the countries that we're at war with can agree that we can guard Antarctica and keep the public away from it, that's enough to make me interested that they're hiding something together.
Yeah, for sure.
The Antarctic Treaty has got the most countries for the most decades that we are literally at war with some of them. So it's very bizarre.
Wow. Fascinating stuff. I'll have to investigate Antarctica once. I mean, there's people. I think I've had friends who are allowed to go to like a tip, land tip of Antarctica. There's a certain area where the public can go.
Absolutely, it's just very controlled. They won't let you like go and go past the no-go zone. It's kind of like taking you to. We're going to take you to America, but they only take you to Key West. You get to play around with some dolphins, and then they take you back, and you're like, I traversed America, and some people will take that as fact when it's just like a controlled little peninsula.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting stuff. Well, Justin Harvey from We Are Change Orlando, thank you for coming on. Thank you
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, your entertaining public testimony. I can't believe they violated your First Amendment right. Are you going to do anything about that? I feel like that's
It's possible. We're looking into it. I mean, the chairman's behavior was very out of line, telling me to go to a mental institution, cutting off my public comment. And apparently, from what I'm hearing, he's been acting crazy towards other people as well, throwing all kinds of people out. So we may try to do something. I don't know. I will say his behavior has made the video more popular, more interesting. So just like censorship always works, when you try to shut someone down and kick them out, now even more people know about the topic that he was uncomfortable with or trying to shut down for whatever reason. So I thank Mr. Jason Steele. And if anybody wants to send a complaint, DM me. I will send you the email you can send to the governor's office because he can be unappointed by Governor DeSantis if we get enough complaints towards him.
Okay, and how can people DM you? What's your info?
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, Justin_WeAreChange. And I'm also on Facebook and Telegram, We Are Change Orlando.
Awesome. Okay, thanks so much for coming on, Justin. Great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. Anytime.